What if I told you that 2,000 years ago, in the heart of the Roman Empire, doctors, barbers, and even emperors believed that urine could heal wounds, whiten teeth, and fight disease? And not just any urine, they preferred Portuguese urine for its strength. It wasn't a joke. It was science. At least, according to ancient Rome. This isn't a myth. It's not a twisted rumor. It's history documented, practiced, and shockingly accepted by some of the most advanced civilizations in human history. And once you see just how far they took it, you'll never look at a golden liquid the same way again. In modern times, the idea of using urine for anything other than waste disposal sounds disgusting, almost comedic. But to the Romans, it was a gift from the gods. An all-purpose potion with mysterious powers. In fact, urine was such a valuable resource in ancient Rome that people paid taxes on it. Yes, taxes. And the government didn't just accept this practice, they encouraged it. The urine tax was introduced by Emperor Vespasian in the 1st century CE, and public urinals were set up across the empire not for hygiene, but for collection. Urine was collected in large vats and sold to tanners, laundries, and most strangely medical practitioners. So why did the Romans consider urine a miracle fluid? It all comes down to one word: ammonia. Long before chemistry had a name, the ancients observed that urine had cleaning properties. When left to ferment, the urea in urine converted into ammonia, a powerful compound that broke down grease and dirt. Laundry workers used it to wash tunics. Tanners used it to soften leather. But Roman doctors? They believed it could clean wounds, treat infections, and even cure mouth disease. In Roman medical texts, especially those by Pliny the Elder, urine is mentioned dozens of times as a treatment. Toothaches? Rinse your mouth with urine. Snake bites? Pour urine on the wound. Skin disease? Bathe in urine daily. It sounds outrageous today, but this wasn't fringe science in their time. It was accepted, practiced, respected. Even elite Roman women used urine-based whitening agents to keep their teeth pearly. Imported Portuguese urine was believed to be stronger and purer, likely due to its different mineral content. And merchants made a fortune selling it across cities. One of the strangest beliefs was that drinking urine, especially from young boys or healthy individuals, could cure internal illness. Yes, you heard that right. There are accounts in which people with stomach ailments or ulcers were advised to consume small quantities of fresh human urine daily. It was believed to rebalance the humors and cleanse the system. But the practice wasn't limited to humans. Veterinarians in Rome also used urine in treating animals. If a horse had an infection, urine was applied directly to the wound. If a dog had fleas, it would be washed in a solution of fermented urine. The logic was simple. What stung must be killing the disease. The connection between Roman science and urine didn't stop at folk medicine. It was institutional. Even military camps had jars of preserved urine for disinfecting wounds. Soldiers were taught how to use it if they didn't have access to other supplies. Some records suggest that wounded warriors cleaned their cuts with stale urine before applying herbal salves. What's even more astonishing is how advanced this concept was for its time. While modern medicine now uses purified ammonia and related compounds in antiseptics and cleaners, the Romans were already using urine's natural chemistry without fully understanding the molecular science behind it. They didn't need a microscope to observe results. They trusted the evidence of their eyes. And when a wound stopped festering, they praised the power of the liquid that modern civilization would come to flush away without a second thought. But was it all effective? Or was it just dangerous pseudoscience? That's where things get complicated. Some modern medical historians believe that fermented urine, while absolutely unsanitary by today's standards, may have had mild antiseptic properties due to the ammonia. In a time when germ theory didn't exist and clean water was a rarity, Using urine might have been safer than some alternatives like stagnant river water or crushed insects. But there's a line between external use and internal consumption, and on that front, Roman medicine crossed into dangerous territory. Pliny the Elder wrote about over 100 medical uses for urine. From eye infections to fungal diseases, it was considered both an emergency cure and a routine hygiene practice. And the belief didn't die with Rome. Through the Middle Ages, so-called urine therapy continued to thrive. In fact, in some remote parts of the world, it still exists today, with believers claiming benefits for skin, immunity, and even cancer. But back in ancient Rome, urine wasn't taboo. It wasn't gross. It was respected, collected, sold, and even taxed. In fact, Emperor Vespasian is still remembered for this very reason. When his son Titus criticized him for imposing a urine tax, Vespasian allegedly held up a coin and said, "Pecunia non olet," money does not stink. The phrase became a Roman proverb symbolizing the empire's unapologetic practicality. So what does this bizarre chapter of Roman medicine really tell us? It tells us that science evolves, but desperation, curiosity, and belief remain eternal. The Romans were willing to try anything to heal, to preserve beauty, to live longer, and in the absence of modern medicine, even the most unthinkable ideas became mainstream. Urine to them wasn't just waste. It was a symbol of function, of healing, of hope. Of course, not all Roman doctors agreed. The famous Galen of Pergamon, perhaps, the most respected physician of antiquity, warned against blindly trusting bodily fluids as medicine. But even he acknowledged urine's diagnostic value. He believed that examining the color, smell, and clarity of urine could tell a physician about internal imbalances, a practice still used in basic form today. In the Roman mind, urine was connected to the gods, to nature, to the body's secrets. It was studied, stored, and written about with seriousness. And that level of belief, however unscientific it seems now, was powerful enough to influence centuries of medicine. Imagine walking into a Roman clinic where the shelves held jars of herbs, oils, and bottles of aged urine. The doctor, with absolute confidence, prescribes a warm rinse of morning urine for your sore throat. And you, believing in the strength of Roman science, accept it without question. That was the reality of healthcare in one of the world's greatest empires. And it's only going to get stranger from here. Because in Part 2, we uncover the rituals, the superstitions, and the economic empires built entirely around urine in ancient Rome, proving this wasn't just medicine. It was a way of life. By now, the idea of urine being used as medicine may sound absurd, even revolting. But in ancient Rome, it wasn't just a health practice, it was an industry. In markets across the empire, jars of urine were openly traded, stored, and labeled for specific uses. Some were aged for potency. Others were collected from particular demographics. There were even superstitions tied to whose urine was most effective, with children, soldiers, and virgins being particularly valued for their purity. But beyond the marketplace, there was an entire ritual culture around this practice. Roman households often stored morning urine separately. It was believed that the first urination of the day contained the strongest healing properties. Women would sometimes keep it for cosmetic purposes, dabbing it on blemishes or mixing it into skin-lightening pastes. This wasn't done in secret. It was considered wise, respectable, even luxurious in elite circles. Roman bathhouses, famous for their grand architecture and role in public life, also contributed to the urine supply. In some cases, communal urinals drained into underground cisterns where urine fermented before being distributed to local businesses and medical practitioners. Imagine standing in a marble hall surrounded by senators, scholars, and merchants, all unknowingly contributing to a national health commodity. The economic aspect cannot be ignored. Urine became a profitable byproduct of daily life. Collectors known as phallones were in charge of gathering and transporting it to laundries, tanneries, and healers. They were like the sanitation workers of ancient Rome, but with a touch of alchemy. Their work was so important that Vespasian's urine tax provided a steady stream of revenue for the empire. This tax was even considered progressive, targeting waste instead of income, and despite initial backlash, it endured for generations. Yet perhaps the most surprising element of this story is how deeply urine was tied to belief and superstition. Roman healers didn't just use it because of its ammonia content, they believed it carried spiritual energy. The body, in Roman philosophy, was a balance of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Urine was seen as a reflection of these elements. Its clarity, color, odor, and even taste were examined carefully. Physicians believed that urine could reveal the inner workings of the soul. This wasn't entirely without merit. Though their conclusions were often flawed, urinalysis was born in ancient Rome. Doctors began keeping detailed notes on how urine changed in the sick versus the healthy. And while they lacked microscopes or modern testing, their observations laid the foundation for centuries of diagnostic medicine. In fact, in some regions of the empire, urine became part of spiritual rituals. For example, it was used in blessings to ward off evil spirits. Mixed with certain herbs, it was sprinkled around sicks to protect against curses. In military camps, soldiers were sometimes ordered to urinate around their tents to create a protective circle. These acts were rooted in a belief that the body is natural waste, especially when pure carried remnants of life force that could be redirected for good. But like all trends in history, the medical use of urine eventually fell out of favor. As Rome declined and the empire fractured, so did the institutional support for these practices. Christianity, with its emphasis on purity and cleanliness, viewed urine use as both unholy and barbaric. Monastic medicine, which became dominant in the Middle Ages, largely abandoned the Roman obsession with bodily fluids except in diagnostic observation. Still, the influence of Rome lingered. In fact, some medieval texts recycled Roman remedies almost word for word. The Taquinum Sanitatis, a 14th-century health handbook, listed urine gargles and compresses for sore throats, ulcers, and wounds. Even during the Renaissance, when European scientists rediscovered ancient Roman texts, urine therapy saw a quiet resurgence in underground medical circles. Some alchemists believed it held clues to immortality, and here's the strangest part: urine never truly left medicine. In the 20th century, a movement called urotherapy emerged, with people once again drinking or applying urine for claimed health benefits. While dismissed by modern science, it proves one thing: the power of belief in healing never dies. Today, urine is still used in very specific medical scenarios, though not directly. Urea, a major component of urine, is used in skincare and dermatological treatments. Some hormone-based medications are derived from purified urine, especially in fertility treatments. So while we no longer rinse our mouths with it, we're not as far from Rome as we might think. So why does this story matter? Because it reminds us that medicine, like all knowledge, is built on layers of trial, error, belief, and observation. The Romans may not have known about bacteria or viral infections, but they were keen observers of cause and effect. They respected the body, they feared disease, and they were willing to try anything to survive it. And isn't that what medicine really is? A journey through fear, faith, and the search for answers, even if those answers come in the most unexpected forms. The next time you hear someone scoff at old remedies or ancient rituals, remember this: the world's most powerful empire once worshipped urine as both a tool and a cure. And they built hospitals, trained physicians, and taxed public waste because they believed in the science of it. In a time without antibiotics, anesthesia, or even soap, people turned to what they had. And somehow, in that darkness, they found hope in the humblest of places. So the question isn't, how could they do that? The real question is, what are we doing today that will sound just as strange in 2,000 years? Because in the end, every generation believes its medicine is modern, until it becomes history.